chosen one, you didn't find this message. This message found you. And if your hands are trembling right now, if something deep in your chest just shifted, that's not anxiety. That's recognition. Why have you been faithful for decades while watching others get promoted in months? Why did you pray through cancer, lose the house, bury your spouse, raise those children alone, and still, people who've never shed a tear in prayer seem to glide through life untouched? Why are you the one carrying generational burdens that aren't even yours to carry? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. There's a rumor circulating in heaven about you, and hell has been working overtime trying to cancel it. Because what God is about to do in your life publicly, undeniably, so strangely magnificent, will force every mouth that mocked you to become a microphone for His glory. You've been hidden, not forgotten, hidden like a weapon being forged in secret, tempered by fire, sharpened by betrayal, polished by pain. And now, right now, heaven is preparing to embarrass you, not with shame, but with favor so bizarre, so inexplicable, so completely unearned that even your enemies will have to testify. God did that. Before I go deeper into this mystery, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let the Holy Spirit lead your heart. But here's the question that's been haunting me. Why would the Almighty hide someone for 40, 50, 60 years, only to promote them in public with such force, such undeniable power, that it offends the very people who watched you suffer in silence? Because this isn't just a breakthrough, beloved. This is spiritual warfare disguised as blessing. This is heaven's strategy to prove that God doesn't just rescue His chosen ones, He brands them with favor so strange, the world can't explain it away. Your tears weren't wasted, your prayers weren't ignored, your faithfulness in the darkness wasn't forgotten. It was all preparation for this moment, when God steps onto the stage of your life and announces your name so loudly that hell itself has to bow to the sound. The season of secret suffering is over. The time of public favor has begun. And what's about to happen will be so undeniably God that you won't be able to hide it, even if you tried. If you know this is for you, if something in your spirit just leaped, type in the comments right now, God, do it publicly. Because this time, beloved, this time it won't be private. The embarrassment of blessing is about to begin. Why have you been crying in bathroom stalls for 30 years, while everyone else seems to post their victories on social media? Why does it feel like you've been enrolled in a graduate course on suffering, while others are still in kindergarten spirituality? Why has your life been one long, brutal education in faithfulness that nobody witnessed, nobody celebrated, nobody even acknowledged? Let me tell you something that's going to cut deep and heal deeper. You weren't randomly selected for hardship, chosen one. You were strategically positioned for it. While others were building platforms, God was building your character in the basement. While they were collecting followers, you were learning to follow Him through valleys so dark you thought you'd lost your way permanently. You see, there's a difference between being loved by God and being trusted by Him. Everyone talks about God's love. It's safe, it's comfortable, it's what fills coffee mugs and bumper stickers. But God's trust, that's reserved for the rare ones. The ones He knows won't break when the pressure builds to crushing levels. The ones who'll stay faithful when faithfulness feels like foolishness. Think about Joseph, 17 years old, dreaming of greatness, only to be thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold like livestock, falsely accused by his master's wife, forgotten in prison for years. Every public moment of his early life was humiliation wrapped in betrayal. But Genesis 41:41 tells us that Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt," from pit to palace in one divine moment. But here's what most people miss: those 13 years of preparation weren't punishment, they were qualified. God was writing in invisible ink across the manuscript of Joseph's life. And when the moment came, He read it out loud to an entire nation. You've been living Joseph's story, haven't you? The dreams that seemed too big for your circumstances, the betrayals that came from people who should have protected you, the false accusations that stole your reputation, the forgotten years when it felt like God himself had amnesia about your address. But what if I told you that every tear you've cried in secret was being collected in heaven's treasury? That every prayer you whispered in desperation was being recorded as evidence of your qualification? That every moment you stayed faithful when faithfulness made no logical sense was building a case file with your name on it? Consider Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Year after year she went to the temple, watching other women hold their babies while her arms remained empty. The text says she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. She learned how to pray in the waiting room, not the throne room. Her prayers weren't pretty, they were desperate, broken, soaked in tears. People thought she was drunk because her anguish was so raw. But God heard every syllable of her pain. And when little Samuel was born, he became the prophet who would anoint kings. Hannah's barrenness wasn't a cursite, was preparation for raising the voice of God's generation. You've been Hannah, crying prayers so deep they had no words, learning to worship through the ache of empty promises and delayed dreams. But what you thought was waste, those years of silent faithfulness, those nights of intercession when nobody was watching, that was your seminary education for the ministry God's about to unveil. Look at Mordecai in the book of Esther. For years, he sat at the king's gate, unnoticed, unrecognized, performing his duties in obscurity. When he saved the king's life by exposing an assassination plot, it was recorded in the royal chronicles and forgotten. Chapter 6, verse 1 tells us that the king couldn't sleep one night and had the record books read to him. That's when Mordecai's faithful act was remembered. The king asked, "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" The answer, "Nothing has been done for him." But before the sun set on that day, Mordecai was being paraded through the streets in royal robes, while his enemy Haman had to proclaim, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." God let them laugh at you, because he knew the same mouths would have to announce your name later. Every person who dismissed you as irrelevant will become a microphone for your vindication. Every voice that said you'd never amount to anything will be forced to testify about what God has done in your life. The mockery wasn't random, it was recorded, and the recording is about to be played back with divine amplification. You learned to pray in waiting rooms while others prayed on stages. You learned to worship in valleys while others worshipped on mountaintops. You learned to trust God with absolutely nothing to show for it, while others trusted him with guarantees and safety nets. But here's what the enemy never calculated. Obscurity isn't punishment when you're being prepared for prominence. Isolation isn't abandonment when you're being educated for influence. The hiding wasn't because God forgot you, it was because he was protecting what he was building in you from being corrupted by premature exposure. Your character had to be forged in the furnace of hiddenness, because what's coming requires more than talent, it requires depth. More than skill, it requires soul. More than ability, it requires authority that can only be earned through the agonizing education of absolute dependence on God. The preparation nobody saw is about to become the platform everybody talks about. If you've ever cried behind closed doors, if you've ever prayed so desperately they scared you, if you've ever wondered if your faithfulness was falling on deaf ears in heaven, write this in the comments right now. I didn't waste my suffering, because that's where the oil came from. That's where the anointing was pressed. That's where your authority was authored. But here's what's about to happen that will shock everyone who counted you out, including yourself. The very people who watched you break are about to watch you rise with such supernatural force that they'll have to ask the question that terrifies hell itself. Why are you more afraid of God blessing you than you are of him ignoring you? Why does the thought of sudden favor terrify you more than another decade of struggle? Why have you convinced yourself that you're safer in the shadows than you would be in the spotlight of heaven's attention? Listen to me, chosen one. There's a difference between being loved by God and being trusted by him. And most believers spend their entire lives settling for love when God has been preparing them for trust. You see, God loves everybody. John 3:16 makes that crystal clear. But trust? Trust is reserved for those who've proven they won't break under pressure, won't compromise under persecution, won't quit when the blessing seems impossible and the waiting feels eternal. You think you've been suffering all these years? But what if I told you that you've actually been in graduate school? What if every betrayal was a test of your character? What if every financial struggle was building your faith muscles? What if every night you cried yourself to sleep was actually a deposit into an account of divine trust that's about to pay dividends so massive it will shock your nervous system? You were faithful when faithfulness didn't benefit you. You tithed when your lights were about to be cut off. You forgave when forgiveness felt like swallowing glass. You praised Him when praise was the last thing your flesh wanted to do. And God was taking notes. He was watching. He was deciding, can I trust this one with favor that will make the world take notice? The answer is yes. And that's why what's coming will offend people. Here's what nobody told you about divine favor. It's not designed to make you comfortable. It's designed to make you a billboard for God's glory. And billboards, beloved, are meant to be seen from miles away. Think about Joseph, 17 years old, dreaming dreams that sounded insane to his brothers. They laughed, they mocked, they threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. For 13 years, Joseph's life looked like proof that God either didn't exist or didn't care. Prison cells, false accusations, forgotten promises. But Genesis 41-14 changes everything. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. Hastily, not gradually. Not after years of therapy to process his trauma. Hastily. 1 minute he's a prisoner, the next minute he's second in command over the entire Egyptian empire. That kind of promotion doesn't make sense to human logic. That kind of elevation offends people who believe favor should be earned through connections and credentials. But God's favor isn't fair, it's strategic. And right now, as I'm speaking these words over your life, something is shifting in the spiritual realm. The same God who promoted Joseph overnight is positioning you for an elevation so sudden, so public, so undeniably supernatural that people won't know whether to congratulate you or investigate you. This next blessing, you won't be able to hide it. Even your enemies will post about it. The very people who whispered about your failures will find themselves announcing your favor. The mouths that spread rumors about your downfall will become megaphones for your comeback. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I need you to brace yourself for this truth. This is the kind of favor that makes people nervous, not happy. When God decides to embarrass you with blessing, it exposes something in others that they didn't know was there. Your sudden promotion will reveal their hidden resentment. Your unexpected breakthrough will uncover their secret bitterness. Your public favor will force them to confront their private jealousy, and some of them won't handle it well. Isaiah 54:17 promises, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." But notice it doesn't say no weapon will be formed. They're coming, chosen one. The whispers, the questions, the accusations. How did they get that job? What do they have that I don't have? There must be something we don't know about. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them waste their energy trying to figure out what you did to deserve what only God could orchestrate. Because here's the secret they'll never understand. This favor isn't about what you've done, it's about who you've become. You've been refined in the furnace of obscurity. You've been tested in the classroom of rejection. You've graduated from the university of undeserved suffering with a PhD in trusting God when nothing makes sense. And now God is about to hand you the keys to a blessing so big, so visible, so undeniably supernatural that it will serve as heaven's advertisement to a watching world. This is what happens when you don't quit on me, even when I seem to quit on you. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote in 1 Corinthians 4-9, "We have been made a spectacle to the world, to angels and to men." A spectacle, not a secret, not a whisper, a spectacle. Something everyone can see, something everyone has to acknowledge, something everyone has to deal with. Your life is about to become a spectacle of God's goodness. And spectacles, by definition, Make people uncomfortable. They'll try to analyze it. They'll search for the formula. They'll interview your neighbors, investigate your past, examine your connections, and they'll come up empty-handed, because what God is about to do in your life has nothing to do with human networking and everything to do with divine positioning. You've been positioned, not by man but by the Almighty, not through politics but through prayer, not because of who you know, but because of who knows you. And when that favor falls on your life like a thunderbolt from heaven, when that blessing lands on your circumstances with such force that it shakes the ground beneath your enemy's feet, remember this moment. Remember these words. Remember that I told you it was coming. Type this out loud right now. Don't just think it. Declare it. God, bless me so publicly it makes the doubters testify. Because the season of secret suffering is over, and the era of public vindication is about to begin. But are you ready for the weight of favor that comes with a spotlight attached? Are you prepared for a blessing that requires explanation you don't have? Dear chosen one, I need you to stop right where you are and ask yourself a question that's been haunting your soul for decades. Why has God's timing felt so cruel? Why did you watch your high school classmates buy their dream homes while you were losing yours to foreclosure? Why did you see younger colleagues get the promotions you prayed for? Why did you bury your spouse after 50 years of marriage, wondering if you'd ever feel whole again? Here's the truth that's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about your delays. God is the only author who writes the end of the book before he lets you live the middle chapters. And what feels like punishment to you has been preparation for him. You think you've been forgotten, but you've been forged. Listen to me carefully. That depression that visited you in your 60s, when everyone else your age was supposed to be enjoying retirement, wasn't random. That financial crisis that hit when you were 70 and thought your struggles were over, that wasn't a cruel fate. That loneliness that followed you, even into your golden years, that wasn't abandonment. It was a divine design, because God knew something about your destiny that required a depth of character that only decades of pressure could create. He knew that the favor coming to you would be so strange, so unprecedented, so completely unearned by human standards, that you needed to be unbreakable before he could make you undeniable. You thought it was punishment. It was preparation. Think about Abraham. This man waited 25 years for the promise of Isaac. 25 years. That's longer than some of your grandchildren have been alive. Genesis 21:5 tells us Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. 100. In today's world, that's 3 decades past retirement age. The world would have called him finished, washed up, irrelevant. But God was just getting started with him. Sarah was 90 years old when she conceived. 90. Her own body had been barren for decades. The doctors would have called it impossible. Science would have declared it over. But heaven operates on a different calendar than earth. And what looked like delay was actually divine timing. Building a testimony so powerful that thousands of years later, we're still talking about the God who opens wombs that science says are closed. But here's what breaks my heart, and it should break yours too. How many nights have you lain awake at 85, wondering if you missed your moment? How many mornings have you looked in the mirror at 78, believing your best days were behind you? How many times have you whispered to God, "Am I too late?" You're not too late. You're right on divine time. Anna, the prophetess, understood this mystery. Luke 2:36-38 tells us she was 84 years old. 84 when she finally saw the Messiah. She had been widowed after only 7 years of marriage and spent the next 77 years in the temple, praying, fasting, and waiting. 77 years of showing up when nothing was happening. 77 years of faithfulness in the silence. The world would have called her a religious fanatic, a lonely old woman clinging to empty hopes. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, she was there, not the young mothers, not the religious leaders. Anna, the 84-year-old woman who had waited longer than anyone else. And what did she do? She became the first female evangelist in the New Testament, proclaiming the coming of the Messiah to all who looked for redemption in Jerusalem. Her age wasn't her disqualification, it was her credential. Her wrinkles weren't signs of decline, they were marks of perseverance. Her years weren't evidence of irrelevance, they were proof of unshakable faith. God saves his strangest favor for those who've waited the longest. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from the burning bush. 80. He had already lived what the world considers a full lifetime. He had tried to be a deliverer at 40 and failed miserably, ending up a fugitive in the desert. For 40 years, he thought his moment had passed. For 4 decades, he believed his calling was dead. But God wasn't finished with him. He was seasoning him, because the Moses who fled Egypt at 40 wasn't ready to confront Pharaoh. That Moses was full of his own strength, his own agenda, his own timeline. But the Moses who emerged from the burning bush at 80, that Moses had been broken of self-reliance, that Moses had learned to depend completely on the voice of God. And what happened next? The greatest deliverance in human history, plagues that brought Egypt to its knees. A sea that split down the middle, water from rocks, bread from heaven, the law given on Mount Sinai. All of it happened after Moses turned 80. His greatest chapter wasn't written in his youth. It was authored in what the world calls old age. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The delay you've endured, every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every season of silence, it wasn't God being slow. It was God being strategic. He wasn't punishing your past. He was preparing your future. Because what's coming to you requires a foundation that only decades of testing can build. The favor that's approaching needs a vessel that's been refined by fire, seasoned by suffering, and matured by mystery. Young people can handle small blessings, but what God has planned for you would crush someone who hasn't learned to trust him in the darkness. The delay broke you down, but it built your depth. It stripped away everything temporary so only the eternal could remain. It removed every false support system so you would learn to lean completely on him. It took away every human solution so you would discover his supernatural provision. And now, right now, as you sit there wondering if it's too late, God is preparing to embarrass you with a favor so strange, so undeserved, so completely beyond your ability to orchestrate that the only explanation will be him. Your tears weren't wasted. They were investments. Your waiting wasn't punishment. It was positioning. Your silence wasn't abandonment. It was an apprenticeship for the authority that's coming. If you know the delay broke you down but built your depth, if you can feel something stirring in your spirit right now, if you're ready to trust his timing, one more time, say it out loud wherever you are. Lord, I'm still here. Do it anyway. Because the God who authored your delays is about to write a conclusion so magnificent, so undeniably supernatural, that everyone who witnessed your waiting will have to witness his wonders, and they won't be able to explain it away. But the question that will determine everything about what happens next is this. Now that you understand why the delay had to be this long, are you ready to discover what kind of favor requires that much preparation? Dear one, what I'm about to tell you will shatter every formula you've ever learned about how God moves. Every prosperity sermon you've heard, every blessing principle you've memorized, every sow and reap teaching you've clung to, throw it out the window. Because what's coming for you operates on a completely different frequency. It's going to look unfair. Because it is. Think about this for a moment. You've tithed faithfully for 50 years, while your neighbor who's never set foot in church just inherited $2 million from an aunt he met once. You've prayed through chemotherapy, while the woman down the hall who curses God daily walked out cancer-free. You've served in ministry for decades, while people who mock your faith get handed opportunities on silver platters. Where's the justice in that? Where's the fairness? Where's the cosmic balance that says good people get good things? Here's the shocking truth. God's favor has never been about fairness. It's about purpose. And what he's preparing to release over your life won't make sense to anyone, including you. Listen to what the psalmist declared in Psalm 126:2. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. Did you catch that? They said it, not you, not your pastor, not your prayer group. The very people who questioned God's goodness in your life will be forced to become His public relations team. But here's where it gets mystical, where it enters the realm of the supernatural that makes rational minds uncomfortable. You're going to receive checks in the mail from sources you never contacted. Companies you never applied to will call, offering positions that don't exist on any job board. Doors will open not because you knocked, but because someone else's key mysteriously fits your lock. And people, the same people who watched you struggle, will scratch their heads and whisper, "How did that happen?" This isn't the favor that makes sense. This isn't the blessing you earn through perfect attendance and perfect behavior. This is the kind of divine intervention that makes theologians nervous and makes skeptics question everything they thought they knew about how the universe operates. You see, beloved, there are two kinds of favor. There's merit-based favor, the kind you work for, pray for, position yourself to receive. And then there's mystery favor, the kind that falls from heaven like lightning, strikes without warning, and leaves everyone asking questions they can't answer. You've been walking in merit-based favor your whole life, doing the right things, saying the right prayers, following the right formulas. But God is about to shift you into mystery favor. And mystery favors don't follow rules. It follows a relationship. Here's what's going to happen, and I need you to brace yourself for this. Your phone will ring at 2:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The voice on the other end will sound nervous, confused, like they're reading from a script they don't understand. "Ma'am, we have a situation here. There's been a development. You need to come in immediately. Your bank account will show deposits that make no mathematical sense. Your mailbox will contain letters from law firms about inheritances, from people whose names you've never heard. Your doorbell will ring, and standing there will be someone holding documents that change everything. Documents that were filed 30 years ago by a grandmother who prayed prayers you never knew she prayed. But here's the part that will make your enemies lose sleep. This favor won't be quiet. It won't be subtle. It won't be something you can hide behind humility or downplay with false modesty. This blessing will be so loud, so public, so undeniably supernatural that even CNN will have to report it as unexplained. They'll call it luck until they realize luck doesn't last 40 years. They'll call it coincidence until they discover there are no coincidences in the kingdom of God. They'll call it timing until they find out it's the answer to a 30-year-old prayer your grandmother whispered into her pillow the night before she de-ate her. Prayer for breakthrough in her bloodline that she never lived to see fulfilled. You are that breakthrough. You are that answered prayer. You are the manifestation of intercession that was offered before you were even born. And here's why this kind of favor terrifies hell and confuses earth. It can't be duplicated. It can't be studied. It can't be packaged into a 3-step formula and sold in the church bookstore. Because mystery favor isn't about what you do, about who you are. And who you are is a walking testimony that God still performs miracles for people who've waited long enough to appreciate them. But let me warn you about something that's about to happen. The moment this strange favor begins to manifest, warfare will intensify. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're about to become living proof that God still embarrasses His enemies with goodness. You'll become a weapon in heaven's arsenal, and hell knows it. Your blessing won't just change your bank account, it will challenge every theology that says suffering saints are somehow more spiritual than blessed saints. Your favor will force preachers to rewrite sermons about poverty being holy. Your testimony will make other believers question why they've been settling for barely enough when God has storehouses of abundance waiting to be unlocked. This is why the favor has to be unexplainable. Because if people could figure out the formula, they'd try to manufacture it. If they could understand the process, they'd try to control it. But mystery favor belongs to mystery God, and He alone decides when it's time to embarrass His children with goodness so strange, even angels lean in to watch what happens next. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, something is shifting in the spiritual atmosphere around your life. Documents are being signed in heaven's courthouse. Names are being called in divine boardrooms. And yours, yes, yours is at the top of the list. The favor isn't coming, beloved. The favor is here. The question isn't whether God will do something unexplainable in your life. The question is whether you're ready to stop explaining it when he does. If you can feel something stirring in your spirit right now, if something deep inside you is trembling with recognition, type this with shaking hands. Lord, do it so loud I can't explain it. Because this favor isn't quiet anymore. This blessing isn't private anymore. This miracle isn't hidden anymore. The God who embarrasses his children with blessing is about to put his signature on your life in ink so bold, even your obituary will testify to his goodness. And that signature, once applied, can never be erased. But what happens when that signature appears? What happens when mystery favor meets public scrutiny? Because the favor that can't be explained often triggers the warfare that can't be understood. Listen to me, chosen one. Something monumental is shifting in the heavenlies right now. Can you feel it? That trembling in your spirit isn't fear, it's anticipation. Because after decades of God testing you in private, he's about to trust you in public. You know what breaks my heart? It's when I meet believers who've been faithful for 70, 80 years, and they still think God is punishing them. Still think their struggles were evidence of his displeasure. Still believe that somehow, if they'd been better Christians, life would have been easier. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. God doesn't pour oil on empty altars. He anoints the ones who didn't leave the altar. And you, dear warrior, you never left. When the fire went out, you stayed. When the crowd dispersed, you remained. When the praise stopped and the persecution started, you held your position. Do you know what that makes you? That makes you qualified for something the comfortable will never understand: public trust. Think about Abraham. Genesis tells us he was tested for 25 years before Isaac was born. 25 years of waiting, wondering, watching his body age, while holding on to a promise that seemed impossible. But here's what most people miss. God wasn't testing Abraham's faith. He was testing Abraham's ability to handle the weight of becoming the father of nations. Because there's a difference between being loved by God and being trusted by him. Everyone who calls on his name is loved. But only those who've proven themselves in the furnace of affliction are trusted with assignments that will impact eternity. You've been in that furnace, haven't you? That financial fire that should have consumed you but only refined you. That health crisis that should have defeated you but only deepened your dependence on him. That betrayal that should have made you bitter but somehow made you better. Every test was a trust exercise. Every trial was God saying, "Can I count on you when no one's watching? Can I trust you to worship me in the wilderness? Can I rely on you to keep your integrity when it costs you everything?" And you passed. Even when you thought you were failing, you were passing. Even when you felt forgotten, you were being formed. Even when you believed you were buried, you were being planted. Moses understood this shift. Exodus 3 tells us he spent 40 years in the wilderness thinking his calling was over. 40 years believing he'd blown his chance to be used by God. But that wilderness wasn't his disqualification, it was his doctoral program in divine dependence. And when God appeared in that burning bush, he wasn't calling Moses for the first time. He was commissioning him for the greatest assignment in human history. You see, the testing phase of your life is over. The trusting phase has begun. But here's what's going to shock you about this shift. Your life is about to speak without your mouth moving. Your very presence will carry authority. Your story will become a sermon. Your survival will become someone else's salvation. People are going to look at you and ask questions you can't answer with logic. How are you still standing? How did you make it through? What do you have that I don't have? And you'll realize that your pain wasn't personal, it was prophetic. Your struggles weren't random, they were strategic. Your suffering wasn't punishment, it was preparation for this moment when God turns your test into testimony. 1 Samuel 2-8 declares, "He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor." Did you catch that? From dust to dynasty, from ashes to authority, from the heap to the throne. That's your story, beloved. That's your trajectory. The same God who lifted David from sheep fields to royal palaces is lifting you from your season of obscurity to your season of influence. But I need to tell you something that might disturb your religious comfort zone. This public trust isn't going to look fair, it's going to look scandalous. People who've never carried your load are going to question why you're being elevated. Folks who've never shed your tears are going to wonder why you're being celebrated. And you know what? Let them wonder, let them question, let them be confused. Because you will be the living proof that favor isn't always fair, but it's always God. You didn't earn this through perfect attendance at church. You didn't qualify through flawless theology. You earned it through faithfulness in the fire. You qualified through persistence in the pain. You proved yourself worthy, not by being strong, but by staying surrendered. Daniel knew this truth. 3 times a day, every day, for 70 years, he opened his windows toward Jerusalem and prayed. When they threw him to the lions, he didn't stop praying. When they promoted him to prime minister, he didn't stop praying. His consistency in the secret place earned him credibility in the public square. That's you, chosen one. Your decades of secret worship, your years of hidden intercession, your lifetime of private faithfulness, it's all been recorded in heaven's ledger. And now God is preparing to make a public withdrawal that will shock everyone who thought your account was empty. The shift is happening right now. Can you sense it? The atmosphere around your life is changing. Doors that have been sealed for decades are beginning to creak open. Opportunities that have passed you by are circling back around. Relationships that have been strained are being divinely realigned. But here's the most powerful part of this shift. You're not going to be afraid of it. You're not going to shrink back from the spotlight. You're not going to apologize for the blessing or minimize the miracle. You know why? Because you understand something that the comfortable crowd doesn't. Public favor isn't about you. It's about God's reputation. When He blesses you openly, He's not rewarding your performance. He's demonstrating His faithfulness to a watching world. You weren't built for secrecy, beloved. You were built for stage light salvation. Your breakthrough isn't meant to be whispered, it's meant to be proclaimed. Your victory isn't designed to be hidden, it's destined to be heralded. So here's my challenge to you right now. Stop shrinking, stop apologizing, stop making yourself small to make others comfortable. The God of the universe has chosen to embarrass you with a blessing so strange, so undeniable, so completely unmerited that it will silence every voice that ever said you weren't good enough. Type this in the comments right now if you're ready. I'm not afraid to be seen blessed. Say it until your spirit believes it. Declare it until your circumstances bow to it. Proclaim it until heaven responds to it. Because the shift from private testing to public trust isn't just changing your position, it's changing your purpose. And what God is about to entrust you with will make everything you've endured worth it. But what happens when this public favor collides with private enemies who thought they'd buried your destiny forever? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. I need to tell you something that might shake you to your core. All this favor that's about to fall on your life like rain after a 40-year drought, it's not about you. I know that stings. I know you've been waiting, praying, believing, bleeding in secret for decades. I know you've whispered into your pillow at 3 a.m., God, when will you remember me? I know you've sat in your kitchen, staring at bills you couldn't pay, wondering if heaven had forgotten your address. But here's the truth that will either offend you or liberate you. This embarrassing blessing that's about to crash into your life isn't heaven's reward for your faithfulness. It's heaven's advertisement for His faithfulness. Jesus said it plainly in Matthew 6:6. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Did you catch that word? Openly. Not quietly, not privately, not in some hidden corner where only you can enjoy it. Openly, publicly, so visibly that every eye will see and every tongue will have to confess that God did this. But why? Why would the Almighty choose to bless you in broad daylight when He could have blessed you in the shadows? Why make your breakthrough so loud that even your enemies have to hear about it? Because this isn't about your vindication, beloved. This is about His reputation. Think about this for a moment. Right now, in the courtroom of eternity, the scrolls of heaven are being unrolled. Ancient documents written before time began are being read aloud. And there in golden ink that never fades, your name is highlighted, not because you earned it, not because you deserved it, but because when God writes a promise, He signs it with His own character. You see, every unanswered prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried in secret, every moment you stayed faithful when faithfulness felt foolish, it's all been building to this moment when heaven steps onto the stage of your life and declares, "Watch what happens when someone trusts me in the dark." Your grandmother prayed for a breakthrough in 1952. Your mother carried that prayer through the 1970s. You've been holding that same hope through decades of disappointment. But what if I told you that every generation that prayed before you was actually depositing into an account that's about to pay dividends with compound interest? This public blessing isn't God saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." This is God saying, "Let me show the world what happens when someone believes my promises, even when their circumstances scream lies." The devil has been whispering for years that you're forgotten, overlooked, past your prime. He's been spreading rumors in the spiritual realm that God's promises have expiration dates. But when heaven embarrasses you with favor, when checks arrive that you didn't earn, when doors open that you didn't knock on, when people start treating you with honor you never commanded, hell itself will have to shut its mouth. Because this isn't vindication for your ego. This is heaven's marketing campaign for the glory of God. Let me paint you a picture that will shatter every limitation you've placed on your future. Picture yourself walking into that bank next month, the same bank where they denied your loan application 3 years ago. Picture the same loan officer who looked at your credit score with pity, now calling you personally with an offer so generous it makes your hands shake. Picture your neighbor, one who whispered about your financial struggles, now asking for advice because your sudden prosperity has them curious about your God. That's not fantasy, beloved. That's a prophecy. Because when God decides to go public with His favor over your life, He doesn't just bless you, He uses your blessing to broadcast His character to a watching world. Your children who stopped calling because they were embarrassed by your struggles, they're about to start boasting about their parents who serve a God of miracles. Your former employer who passed you over for promotion because of your age, they're about to see that some people don't need their approval, they have heaven's endorsement. But here's what's going to shock you most. When this strange favor begins to manifest, when people start asking, "How did this happen to you?" you won't be able to explain it. You'll open your mouth to give credit to your education, your connections, your hard work, and the words won't come. Because God is going to make sure that your blessing is so clearly supernatural, so obviously divine, that the only explanation will be Him. This is why Matthew 6:6 is so critical. Your Father, who sees in secretory midnight prayer, every sacrificial offering, every act of kindness that nobody witnessed, He's about to reward you openly, not because you deserve it, but because His name deserves to be glorified through your story. The same God who parted the Red Sea in front of millions, who fed 5,000 with a boy's lunch, who raised Lazarus from the dead in front of a crowd, that same God is about to use your life as His next public miracle. Your promotion will preach louder than any sermon. Your restoration will testify more powerfully than any testimony. Your breakthrough will become His breakthrough into the hearts of people who thought God had gone silent. So when the favor falls, and it's about to fall like lightning, don't you dare apologize for it. Don't minimize it. Don't try to explain it away with logic or luck or coincidence. Let it shine. Let it speak. Let it declare to every demon in hell and every angel in heaven that your God is still the God who embarrasses His children with goodness they could never earn. Say it like fire right now. Lord, let my blessing preach louder than my pain ever could. Because, chosen one, the announcement of your name isn't coming from earth, it's being broadcast from heaven itself. And what heaven announces, hell cannot argue with. But the question that will determine how you receive this public favor is this: are you ready to be God's living advertisement? Are you prepared for your life to become His billboard? Because once heaven goes public with your blessing, there's no going back to private suffering. The spotlight is warming up, your name is being called, and the world is about to witness what happens when God decides to embarrass someone with a favor so strange, it can only be explained by His love. You know what nobody talks about in church? The kind of pain that happens in public, the kind of humiliation that gets witnessed, the kind of failure that leaves you naked in front of people who used to respect you. I'm talking to someone right now whose breakdown became the talk of the town. Someone whose marriage ended so messily that strangers at the grocery store knew your business. Someone whose kids chose sides and chose wrong. Someone whose financial collapse was so complete that you had to move back in with your family at 73 years old. You didn't just lose everything, dear one. You lost everything in front of everyone. And they didn't just laugh. Oh no, that would have been mercy. They documented it. They screenshotted your lowest moment. They whispered in church pews about how the mighty have fallen. They shook their heads and said, "I always wondered about them." Your humiliation became their entertainment. Your private hell became their public conversation. You were faithful and broke, honest and betrayed, humble and humiliated. Listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will shatter every lie the enemy has whispered about your public shame. That stage where you were embarrassed, that exact stage is where God is about to embarrass you again, but this time with favor so outrageous, so inexplicable, that the same mouths that mocked you will be forced to magnify his name. You think Job doesn't understand what you've been through? This man lost his children, his wealth, his health, and his reputation all in one day. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends sat in his living room and accused him of secret sin. The entire city watched Job scrape his boils with broken pottery, reduced from the richest man in the region to a cautionary tale parents told their children. But here's what Job's story teaches us about God's strategy. The same city that watched you suffer is the same city that's going to hear about your double portion. Job 42:10 declares, "And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." Twice as much. But notice something profound. God didn't restore Job in private. He didn't give him a quiet blessing in another town where nobody knew his story. The restoration happened right there, in front of the same people who watched him fall. Why? Because God's favor isn't just about blessing you, it's about making a statement. It's about proving that when he chooses to lift someone up, not even their worst moment can disqualify them from his best moment. You've been living in the ashes of that humiliation for years now, haven't you? Every morning you wake up, you remember. Every time you walk into that church, that office, that family gathering, you feel it. The weight of what people saw, the shame of what they know, the fear that they'll never see you the same way again. But here's the mystery that's about to blow your mind. God has been collecting those ashes. Every tear of embarrassment, every sleepless night of regret, every moment you wished you could disappear. He's been gathering it all like precious stones. Because in heaven's economy, ashes aren't endings, they're ingredients. Isaiah 61:3 promises beauty for ashes. But it's not just any beauty, it's beauty that's shaped like the very thing that destroyed you. It's a favor that looks exactly like what humiliated you. It's a blessing that rises from the grave of your greatest shame. This next blessing, listen to me, this next blessing will be shaped like the very thing that embarrassed you. If you lost your house in foreclosure, God's about to give you property that makes no sense. If your marriage failed publicly, He's about to restore relationships in ways that defy explanation. If your children rejected you, He's about to use your story to heal families you've never met. If your business collapses, He's about to open doors that your resume doesn't qualify you for. The favor won't just be a big, chosen one. It will be specific. It will be personal. It will be precisely designed to address the exact wound that bled in public. You see, when God decides to embarrass you with a blessing, He doesn't do it randomly. He does it strategically. He looks at the place where the enemy thought he destroyed your testimony, and He makes that the exact place where your testimony gets resurrected. But I need you to understand something that might cut deep. This kind of favor doesn't come to people who are trying to protect their reputation. It comes to people who have surrendered their reputation. It comes to those who have stopped caring what people think because they've learned to care what God thinks. Your public humiliation wasn't your disqualification. It was your preparation for public vindication. And here's what's going to shock you about this next move of God. It's going to happen in the same geography where you were shamed. The same people who watched you fall are going to watch you rise. The same voices that pronounced you finished are going to have to announce your favor. The same eyes that saw you at your lowest are going to witness you at your highest. God doesn't just restore in secret, beloved. He restores where the damage was done. He heals where the wound was made. He lifts where the fall happened. You've been trying to hide from your past, but God is about to use your past as a platform. You've been running from your story, but your story is about to become your sermon. You've been ashamed of your scars, but those scars are about to become your credentials. The enemy thought he buried you in that humiliation, but what he didn't know is that you can't bury a seed and expect it to stay dead. You can't plant someone in the ground who carries resurrection DNA in their spiritual bloodstream. Your humiliation was your planting. Your favor is your harvest. And harvest time doesn't whisper, it shouts. If you've ever felt exposed by life, if you've ever had your business become the world's business, if you've ever wished you could rewrite the chapter that everyone read, type this right now. Lord, reverse the scene. Use the stage that shamed me to lift me. Because God is about to turn your stage of shame into your platform of praise. And when He does, you'll understand why the blessing had to be built on the ashes of humiliation. Because only something that rises from the dead can prove there's life after burial. But what happens when that kind of favor starts to manifest? What happens when heaven decides to embarrass you with a blessing so strange that it triggers spiritual warfare you never expected? You know what nobody tells you about divine favor? The moment it starts falling on your life, hell declares war. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. If the attacks in your life have become stranger, more vicious, more targeted in the last few months, if you've been hit with things that make absolutely no sense, battles you never signed up for, resistance that feels almost personal, you're not losing your mind, you're being prepared for promotion. The moment favor falls, resistance rises. Always, without exception. Think about this. Why would a homeless man get mugged? He has nothing to steal. But why would a millionaire need security? Because when you carry something valuable, you become a target. And right now, dear one, you're carrying something hell recognizes, even if you don't, the scent of impending favor. What crowns you publicly also paints a target on your back. Jesus himself experienced this. Luke chapter 2. Verse 34 tells us something chilling about the Christ child. This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against. Did you catch that? A sign that will be spoken against. Not celebrated, not welcomed, spoken against. The favor that was about to change the world would first provoke the world to warfare. Here's what's happening in your life right now that you need to understand. You're not being fought because you're doing something wrong. You're being attacked because you're about to be raised publicly, and the enemy can smell it on you like expensive perfume. Have you noticed how the resistance has become strange? How people who used to be neutral toward you have suddenly become hostile? How doors that should open are slamming shut with unusual force? How even your own family members are turning cold, distant, almost suspicious of you? That's not a coincidence. That's spiritual warfare responding to spiritual favor. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on nobodies. He doesn't deploy his best demons against people who pose no threat to his kingdom. But you've got his attention, because hell can see what's written in heaven's appointment book, and your name is highlighted in gold. Let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. The intensity of the warfare is proportional to the magnitude of the blessing. Small attacks indicate small breakthroughs, but the kind of hell you've been walking through lately, that's not preparation for a minor miracle. That's boot camp for a public demonstration of God's power that will silence every lying tongue. Remember Job? The Bible says he was blameless and upright, yet Satan specifically targeted him. Why? Because his righteousness was a threat to the kingdom of darkness. Job chapter 1 verse 8 records God saying, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him." You know what happened next? Everything was stripped away. Everything. But here's what the devil didn't know. He wasn't destroying Job's testimony. He was setting up Job's double portion. That financial attack that came out of nowhere, the health scare that doctors can't explain, the relationship betrayals that feel orchestrated, the depression that settled on you like a heavy coat you never ordered. That's not God punishing you. That's hell trying to prevent what God has scheduled. But here's the mystery that will blow your mind. The same enemy that's attacking you is actually confirming your calling. Every demon that shows up at your door is essentially delivering a telegram from hell that says, "We're scared of what you're about to become." The proof that your blessing is near is how strange the resistance has become. Have you ever wondered why David was hunted by King Saul for years? Why would a king spend his entire army chasing one shepherd boy? Because Saul could sense the anointing. He could smell the oil of kingship on David's head, and it drove him mad with jealousy and fear. The very thing trying to destroy you is confirming what God has already decided about your future. But let me tell you what the enemy fears most. He fears a generation of believers who understand that spiritual warfare isn't proof of God's absence, it's proof of His presence. He fears saints who've learned to interpret attacks as announcements, resistance as recognition, and warfare as the labor pains of their miracle being born. You've been wondering why life got harder when you got closer to God, why the struggles intensified when your faith increased. Why did the doors start slamming when your prayers got deeper? Because the closer you get to your breakthrough, the more desperate the enemy becomes to stop it. Think about the Israelites at the Red Sea. With Pharaoh's army charging behind them and the waters blocking their path, it looked like certain death. But that impossible moment wasn't their end in it, was their launching pad. The very thing that threatened to destroy them became the stage for the greatest miracle in their history. Your Red Sea moment is coming, and everything that's been chasing you, threatening you, trying to drown you, it's all about to become the backdrop for God's most public display of favor in your life. The attacks haven't been random, they've been strategic. Hell has been trying to break you before you break through, to silence you before you testify, to bury you before you rise. But here's what the devil didn't count on. You're still here. After everything he's thrown at you, the betrayals, the losses, the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the mornings you didn't want to get up, you're still standing, still believing, still fighting. That's not human resilience. That's divine protection over someone heaven refuses to lose. The enemy thought he was destroying your testimony, but God was actually building your platform. Every attack that didn't kill you only added another layer of authority to your voice. Every storm you survive gives you credibility with other people walking through storms. Every battle you win teaches you how to help others win their battles. You think you've been through hell because you did something wrong. You've been through hell because you're about to do something right. Something so right, so powerful, so undeniably God, that hell had to mobilize its entire arsenal to try to stop it. If the attacks have been unexplainable lately, if you've been hit with things that don't make sense, battles that feel too big for your life, resistance that seems almost supernatural type, this in the comments right now: Lord, embarrass me with favor anyway. Because what's about to happen will make every attack you've endured look like preparation, every wound look like qualification, and every tear look like an investment in a testimony that will shake nations. The warfare isn't ending, chosen one. It's about to become the very thing that announces your victory, because when God decides to embarrass you with blessing, even your enemies become His marketing team. But here's what you need to understand about the kind of favor that's heading your way. It won't just bless you privately, it's going to crown you publicly. And when that happens, the same people who watched you bleed will have to watch you rise. Listen to me, survivor. You lost people because your covenant confused them. They couldn't understand why God would choose someone who looked broken to carry something so powerful. They walked away not because you weren't worthy, but because they couldn't handle the weight of what you were becoming. You became a spiritual eyesore to people who thought they knew your future. They had already written your obituary, planned your limitations, predicted your ceiling, but God whispered something different. He said, "I'm about to make this one so blessed, it becomes offensive to small minds." You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? The moment people realized God wasn't just healing you, He was promoting you, they turned. The same voices that said, "Pray harder," suddenly said, "Slow down." The same people who encouraged your faith suddenly questioned your favor. Why? Because controversy is the birthmark of covenant. Abraham knew this pain. Genesis 12:2 records God's promise, "I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing." But notice what God didn't promise. He didn't promise it would be comfortable. He didn't promise everyone would understand. He promised a blessing wrapped in bewilderment, a favor that would confuse the very people who thought they knew Abraham's story. At 75 years old, Abraham left everything familiar. Can you imagine the whispers in Ur? There goes crazy Abraham, following a voice no one else can hear. His own family probably thought he'd lost his mind. But God was establishing something that would echo through eternity, a covenant that causes controversy. Dear chosen one, your blessing has been delayed because God needed to separate the supporters from the spectators. He needed to remove everyone who would try to take credit for what only heaven could orchestrate. The people who left your life weren't losses, they were clearances. God was making room for favor so strange, no human could claim they helped engineer it. The favor is not for status, it's for warfare. The favor is not for luxury, it's for testimony. The favor is not for comfort, it's for controversy that leads to conversion. Do you understand what this means? Every door that slammed in your face was God protecting what He was about to place in your hands. Every rejection you endured was heaven saying, "Not yet. They're not ready to witness what I'm preparing." Every betrayal that broke your heart was actually breaking the chains that would have limited your calling. But here's where it gets dangerous for the enemy. Here's why hell has been working overtime to keep you discouraged, isolated, and convinced that your best days are behind you. Because when God finally unveils what He's been building in secret, when He pulls back the curtain on decades of faithful preparation, it won't just bless you. It will challenge every theology of limitation that says God only uses the young, the connected, the perfect. Your story is about to become a weapon against the spirit of ageism in the church. Your favor is about to demolish the lie that says wisdom comes with retirement instead of activation. Your covenant is about to prove that God's most powerful moves happen through people the world has written off. The favor is not for status. It's for warfare. The favor is not for luxury, it's for testimony. This is why your blessing has felt like a battle. This is why every step forward has been met with 3 steps of resistance. Because what God is about to do through you will create such a shift in the spiritual atmosphere that hell had to mobilize early to try to stop it. But they're too late. The covenant has already been signed in heaven's courthouse. The blessing has already been approved by the divine treasury. The favor has already been stamped with the seal of the Most High. All that's left is the public announcement. And when it comes, when heaven finally says your name out loud, there will be controversy. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you did everything right while everyone was watching. You prayed when prayer felt pointless. You praised when praise felt forced. You stayed faithful when faithfulness felt foolish. They're about to witness a God who doesn't just rescue you. He brands you in public with favor so undeniable that even your critics become your confirmers. This isn't just breakthrough, beloved. This is a prophetic demonstration. You're not just getting blessed, you're becoming evidence that God still chooses the overlooked to confound the overconfident. The controversy isn't coming to destroy you, it's coming to establish you. Because when God embarrasses you with blessing in front of the same people who counted you out, it forces them to confront their own theology about who God uses and when He uses them. Your gray hair isn't a limitation, it's a crown of authority. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decline, they're maps of divine faithfulness. Your slow walk isn't weakness, it's the measured pace of someone who's learned that God's timing is perfect timing. Are you ready to become controversial for the glory of God? Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to carry these truths with you like precious stones in your heart. Remember this: God doesn't embarrass you with blessing to shame others. He does it to showcase His faithfulness. Every tear you've cried in secret, every prayer you've whispered in the darkness, every moment you felt forgotten, none of it was wasted. It was all preparation for this season when heaven pulls back the curtain and reveals what divine patience produces. Remember that your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. While the world celebrates youth, God celebrates endurance. While others measure success by speed, He measures it by steadfastness. Your wrinkles are not signs of decline, they're evidence of divine refinement. You are not too old for God's strange favor. You are precisely the right age for His perfect timing. Remember that the controversy coming with your blessing is not punishment, it's proof. When God elevates you publicly, it will confuse people who thought they had you figured out. Let them wonder, let them whisper, let them try to explain what only heaven can orchestrate. Their confusion is confirmation that God is doing something only God can do. But hear me clearly, you are not walking this path alone. The same God who spoke worlds into existence is still speaking over your situation right now. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you in the final stretch. Romans 8:31 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? That's not just a verse, that's your reality. And beyond God's unwavering presence, you have a community right here. Look at these comments flowing in thousands of hearts connecting, spirits recognizing spirits, chosen ones finding their tribe. We're not just watching a video together, we're witnessing a divine appointment. This community will pray with you, stand with you, and celebrate with you when your public embarrassment of blessing manifests. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. If God trusted you with hidden suffering, why wouldn't He trust you with public glory? If He kept you faithful in the valley, what makes you think He'll abandon you on the mountaintop? Before I release you into your destiny, join me in this prayer. Place your hand on your heart and let me speak over your life as if I'm standing right beside you. Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, I come before you now carrying every precious soul who has heard this message. Father, you see their hearts, the hope mixed with fear, the faith battled by doubt, the longing for breakthrough wrapped in decades of waiting. Lord, I pray right now that you would breathe fresh wind into their weary spirits. Where they feel forgotten, remind them they are chosen. Where they feel too old, show them they are perfectly positioned. Where they feel overlooked, reveal to them that they have been observed by heaven itself. God, embarrass them with your goodness. Overwhelm them with favor so strange that they can't explain it, so public that they can't hide it, so undeniable that even their enemies must testify to your faithfulness. Let doors open that no man can shut. Let provision flow from sources they never imagined. Let relationships be restored that seemed permanently broken. Father, give them supernatural courage to carry supernatural blessing. When the favor comes, and it is coming, let them walk in it with humility and authority. Let their lives become billboards of your mercy, testimonies of your timing, and proof that you still do the impossible through the improbable. Surround them with divine protection. Shield them from the controversy that comes with covenant blessing. Give them wisdom to steward what you're about to entrust to them, and let their story become the very thing that sets other captives free. In the mighty name of Jesus, who was embarrassed with a blessing on the cross that became a blessing for the world, I seal this prayer. Let your will be done in their lives, Lord. Let heaven's favor fall like rain. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart today. Don't hold back, your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you need prayer for a specific situation, ask this community to stand with you. We're not just strangers on the internet, we're family in the kingdom. And please, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. There's a grandmother in your neighborhood who thinks her best days are behind her. There's a grandfather in your family who's given up on his dreams. There's someone in your sphere of influence who needs to know that God's favor has no expiration date. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your hearts, for believing beyond your circumstances, for daring to hope that your story isn't over, it's just getting to the good part. If this message has changed something in you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your breakthrough journey is just beginning, and I want to be here to celebrate every victory with you. Until we meet again, walk in the confidence of who you are, chosen, beloved, and about to be publicly embarrassed by the goodness of God. Go in peace, go in power, go in expectation of a strange favor that only heaven can explain.